Hello, my name is Lindsay Roundtree. I am COO at ExchangeWire, and I am joined today for this Vox Pop by Alex Hawkesworth, Head of Product at 50. Alex, welcome.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Great to have you here. And we're here to talk about ESG, sustainability in advertising.
Sustainability in advertising, a big iceberg of a topic.
Oh, iceberg. Great way of describing it.
So much under the water.
Yeah, so let's kick off. What is digital sustainability?
So digital sustainability, certainly in ad tech, is a movement that's growing at the moment to try and achieve a supply path or a supply chain that is carbon neutral, or as carbon neutral as possible, by reducing the environmental impact of creating and delivering digital campaigns, while trying not to sacrifice the efficacy, the results that you can drive from them, because it wouldn't be sustainable if you get rid of that part.
And why should it be sustainable? Why is that important?
So sustainability is, certainly within our industry, actually a rather terrifying topic. We've been calculated across a yearly basis to produce about 2% of all carbon emissions. So to put that into a also incomprehensible number, that's the same as Germany's whole output.
Wow.
Yeah, just from our industry.
That's terrifying.
Pretty scary, right? And I think, if we start thinking about that from an environmental prospect, just from personal responsibility, that's kind of frightening. But also from the point of view of understanding that we have an entire generation, if this hits home to the money, we have an entire generation of people who are coming up who see environmentalism as probably one of their primary topics. They're happy to spend more money on something that is more environmentally focused. And these are people who are also starting to work for our businesses. So as they come into the employment sphere, they're going to ask that question. Am I working for a company that's environmental? Does this company need to consider it? So that affects all parts of every single supply chain.
Let's take a step back. You just highlighted that our industry is responsible for like 2% of the output of global emissions. People think digital is green.
And look,
where's the miscommunication happened there, where it's actually a huge gas guzzling industry going on here?
So I think it goes back a little bit to the pivot from paper to digital, right? From print to digital. If you're thinking about a single-use piece of paper for an advert, yes, that's probably not particularly good for the environment. The issue we have now is that our industry has become considerably more complex and considerably larger. The scale of our industry is vast. We definitely outclass any of the other industries at the moment. And the way that we are creating and delivering the creative that we have now is a hugely wasteful and unoptimized system. It's designed only to deliver the best possible results rather than to work in a way that is in any way considering the environment. So if we start considering the different elements of it, from the creative, building of creative and delivering of creative, we're moving towards video creatives now. They're larger amounts of data you have to send to somebody's computer each time you're serving an impression. That adds a weight to it. If we consider programmatic and the amount of tracking, the amount of data that has to be stored and synced between different platforms to just target an advert. Now that's before you've even started the programmatic bidding process, which is where if a publisher has, let's say, 3 or 4 SSPs on its site, it's going to be contacting many thousands of different DSPs with the same piece of information to see who will bid the most money, without considering whether we can use things like supply path optimization to reduce that, slim it down, create both a better return for the advertiser and also reduce the number of different people who have to be involved in that process. And then at the end of it, we just have to consider whether the industry is now at a point where we can start to change. We're at an inflection point within privacy, within our ability to start considering the volume of different partners who play in this industry. And how we want to manage data, measurement, and identity in the future. So we kind of have an opportunity to change things. We're not green right now, but we could be if we start to move towards it. And I think there's a good case to say that we're not having to sacrifice too much to do that.
It's very terrifying if you consider actually viewability as a KPI. It's still a fairly recent new metric to the industry. And the amount of wastage you think about that most ads haven't even been viewable for the past 10 years. That's quite a scary thought.
Hugely scary thought. We were serving all these things and racking up vast amounts of carbon emissions on that. I mean, the basic campaign now is estimated to create about 323 tons of carbon emissions just for a single digital campaign.
That is very scary.
I know, it is, right? I mean, you'd assume it's just serving all these things out, but there is so many elements of it that create carbon, wastage, etc., that we really need to stop and think about that.
And so the question, it feels like an obvious question, but it won't be an obvious answer. Who is responsible for fixing this? Making the digital industry green?
I mean, that's a question for all environmental issues, right? People ask themselves, who do we think should be doing this? And everyone says, well, I hope somebody else will help fix the environment because I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. Well, we have an opportunity now. As we said, we're at that inflection point. We could actually do something about it within our own industry. And not only from the point of view of social responsibility, but from corporate responsibility, from that ability for brands to work with a set of consumers that want this to happen, all the way down through the supply chain to the point where we can produce better, more sustainable products for every level of digital advertising.
So what are you seeing that's meaningful that's happening in the industry right now?
So there are a number of different companies that have come out that are doing really interesting work. Most of those are focused around measuring and quantifying those emissions. And businesses really should go out and find out, understand and own your emissions at the moment. Because if you understand, that's the first step towards doing something about it. So companies like Scope 3 that can look at and analyze exactly how many emissions you're producing from both your supply chain element, like where you sit within digital advertising, but also as a business, how you can change simple and quick elements to reduce that. We're not saying that everybody can fix every single piece of carbon that they're producing, but you can certainly start to reduce and even offset that to start with. The next step is to just decide to do something about it. There are initiatives like Ad Net Zero, which is a group of advertisers, platforms, and large brands that have come together to say that they would like to have a carbon neutral supply chain by 2030. That's not even 10 years off. It seems like a long way, but it's going to be a lot of work to get there.
It'll come around quickly.
That's a really, really hugely noble thing to aim for. Whether we can get there is another question. And I think it's about mobilizing more businesses now so that there is a route to market with a carbon neutral supply chain. It probably won't be every single player at that point in time, but if it becomes the de facto route that people want to choose, well, people will be changed just by the market force itself.
And what are you yourselves at 50 doing in the ESG space?
So 50 has actually put environmentalism at the heart of our business. We've made some drastic changes to try and drive our business towards that. So we're currently...
A bold statement to say you're putting it at the heart of your business.
It is at the heart of what we're doing, simply because we feel that we are both responsible for the way that we work, but we also need to set ourselves forward. If people don't start stepping forward and setting an example within the industry, then it won't happen. So we're currently carbon negative as a business, which is probably the simplest part for us to solve. We are working towards our B Corp certification. And we have...
For those not sure, what is B Corp?
So B Corp is essentially identifying companies that are working towards sustainability and putting it at the heart of what they're doing. It's a long certification process where they analyze both your business processes and all of the different decisions you're making within that to essentially achieve what is a badge of honor in the path to sustainability. But we've also changed the way that we work with our data. So we've moved away from an ID-based targeting model. We use more holistic measurement systems, but we're not tracking hundreds of thousands of different consumer data points. So we're not using that huge database space to crunch massive numbers. Now, I'm not saying that we've completely got rid of all of that. Of course, we have to process data, but we're doing it at a far more holistic level. So we're understanding audiences from social and web data at an aggregate level, and then using that as a single model rather than tracking every single individual user and hoping that data becomes relevant for a particular audience. We're also starting to look at test and learn. We're starting to try and step away from trying to use granular level attribution, etc. And we're working with SSPs rather than engaging with every single DSP and duplicating all of our data sets across them.
Interesting. And does the move of removing IDs, does that impact your business? Does that impact your ability to target and perform for your clients?
So it's a really good question, and I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns that's happening within the industry right now. Newsflash, cookies will go away at some point. It's just, unfortunately, Google is dipping its toe in the water and deciding it's definitely not the right temperature yet. So I think most people will have to move towards a different, either lower volume identity model or away from identity entirely. And we're seeing a lot of businesses doing that, especially in the independent agency area. It does mean that you are unlikely to be able to have that one-to-one granular conversation. But using big data that we have now and modeling people's preferences and behaviors across not just a single browser-based behavior data point is far more effective than it was before. And because we can process and understand that data, we're finding that 50 is competing and outperforming cookie-based targeting. To be fair, it's not cheating, but because cookie-based solutions can't target almost half of the consumer base at the moment, we're going to outperform, we would hope to outperform them certainly. But we're doing so while also having a far lower environmental impact. So we believe this is a huge net win on both sides of that, both for the fact that we can perform better and we're also helping on an ESG basis.
And do you find, or do you think you will find, that the clients you work with will want to work with companies like 50 because of your ESG status and B Corp status, or will that just be, for you, a hygiene factor?
So I think it's a bit of both, right? Certainly from the point of view of within our business, I think people want to feel that they know that there is a purpose and their business is doing something through that. So younger Gen Z employees coming up certainly very much have a high affinity with that and identify with it and appreciate it. For my own conscience and for the business's own conscience, I think it's a hugely good thing to know that we're doing something and we can feel that we are having an effect. But then from the point of view of brands, I mean, look, Patagonia just recently has turned the whole business model up on its head. I mean, almost the opposite of what you do with any other business in the capitalist world at the moment. We know that there is a narrow but growing market for brands that are looking to do this. Unilever said the other day that their purpose is to move towards these environmental goals. And Keith Weed famously said, brand say, brand do. We know that brands are starting to explore and look for this way. What I don't think they know yet is that there is a sustainable supply chain being built. And as that starts to become more obvious, and thank you for this video, it's an enormous help for getting the word out.
You're most welcome.
As that becomes more obvious, we hope to see more and more brands moving towards it and being able to get on board with this movement.
And what do you think that means from a brand perspective? So Keith Weed saying brand say, brand do. Do you think that they will actually, a marketing team, when they receive their budgets and their forecasts and their targets for the year, will that contain an ESG element going forward, or should it do?
I think it really should. But obviously I might be a little bit biased because that's where we are right now. What I think is, probably the overarching thing of this is that if it doesn't make commercial sense, people are unlikely to do it. So we have to do this in a way that is fully sustainable, that still provides the efficacy of systems that we've had before, just doing it in a different way, a new way, which is always scary to our industry and a lot of people who are, used to their traditional ways of working. But I would hope that in future we start to see more regulation, whether that's industry-led or whether that's more at a governmental level, that's starting to push people towards doing this and involving a certain amount of their business in trying to achieve those goals. If we could have, and this is me speaking not from the company's point of view, if we could have a tax on carbon production, I think that would be a hugely effective way for the whole industry, the whole society to move towards better forms of this. We are really lucky to work in a highly innovative and adaptive industry.
Absolutely.
If we can't do it, then no one can, but I believe we can. We think we've already proved this within 50's performance at the moment. We deliver campaigns that return far higher KPIs than we see in other ID-based, other more environmentally damaging systems. And we're doing it in a way that we can hold our head up high.
And aside from work with 50, because that feels like an obvious answer to this, what's your piece of advice to planners, buyers, in terms of if they want to start making changes in terms of how they manage campaigns or how they communicate with their tech partners and their clients alike? What's your piece of advice to them?
So I think it's about knowledge. You've got to go out and learn about this. And one of those things is the really hardest part is going, okay, well, what are the carbon footprint that we are producing as a business? And how much is that? It was a bitter pill to swallow for us.
I'm sure.
But once you know that you can start to make changes. Nobody expects anyone to go carbon neutral overnight. It's a hard and long struggle. We're a smaller business. It was more simple for us than it would be for a larger business. But every small change that you can make, as long as you're not sacrificing the performance, because obviously we're all led by the performance we provide to our clients, every small change that you can make is the thing that will lead towards larger and better returns for the environment, for people, planet, and for profits.
I mean, what a way to end it. This ESG really is an iceberg, but thank you for coming in and chatting to us today. It's fascinating, some stats you had there as well. And 50 are leading the way in terms of B Corp status, Ag Tech, and of course, ESG more generally. There
are many out there, but we're very grateful to have this podium. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you for coming to Exchange World today. Thank you. Cheers.